Everybody talks about how exciting moving abroad is. No one really talks about how expensive it is. Not just the obvious costs, but the sneaky costs, the boring costs, and the why is my money disappearing costs. So today we're breaking it all down. What moving abroad actually cost us, from big decisions to small things quietly adding up. Welcome to episode 8 of our 10-part series about our story moving abroad. In the last episode, we talked about importing our car, which already gave you a small preview in how fast cost can spiral. But today, we're zooming out, because moving abroad isn't just one big expense. It's dozens of medium ones and hundreds of small ones. Some of them we planned, some we definitely didn't. So in this episode, we're breaking down what we spent, what we didn't spend, what surprised us, and what we would do differently next time. This is not financial advice. Just our real numbers, our real choices, so you can make better ones. And just to be clear, this total does not include the period where we were still looking for a house. That was a separate chapter with its own budget. Let's start with the biggest fork in the road. A moving company quoted us around 10,000 euros. And honestly, that price makes sense. International moves are expensive, but for us, that just wasn't realistic. So instead, we decided to do it ourselves. Rent a van, drive multiple times, organize storage, and fully accept chaos as part of the process. These first costs were renting a van for a whole month for about 2,700 euros, a storage unit at Shurgard for 150 euros, and fuel for the trips with the van around 600 euros. So the total cost for this was around 3,500 euros. That one decision alone saved us roughly 6,500 euros. Will we do it again? Yes. Was it exhausting? Also yes. But cost-wise, absolutely worth it. The travel cost is where it quietly started to stack up. We only had hotel stays on the way back, because we didn't want to leave the fully loaded van parked outside overnight. And then there were the last 2 or 3 nights in the Netherlands. The plan was to stay in our apartment, but once we pulled out the floor, we found way more than we expected. Moisture spots from the bathroom that was only 2 years old, and so much dust that it didn't feel healthy to stay there any longer than we needed to. So we booked hotels instead. This was one we completely underestimated. In total, we spent around 600 euros on hotels. Was it a lot? Yes. Was it necessary? Also yes. Driving long distances while exhausted is dangerous. And to be honest, we did still push it. On the way to Sweden, we took turns driving and slept in the van for a couple hours. On the very last trip home, we slept in the car and arrived when it was already dark. If we ever did this again, we would book more hotels, not fewer. We crossed the bridge between Denmark and Sweden 5 times. Total costs about 300 euros. We paid full price every time. No discounts, no passes. If you plan this better, this can be cheaper. We just didn't. Fuel is always painful because it's expensive. In total, we drove roughly 8,000 kilometers, 2 round trips with a van and 1 trip with the car. The total fuel costs were about 900 euros. Necessary, painful, and very boring. We are not really counting our travel food and snacks. You have to eat anyways. But yes, you can make this very expensive if you wanted to. We kept it simple. We basically survived on nachos, hummus, and McDonald's. Buying a house sounds scary financially, but Sweden surprised us here. Let's talk about realtor costs. As a buyer, you pay nothing. In Sweden, it's standard that the seller pays the realtor. So you don't get a surprise invoice, you don't have to budget for it. It's just not your problem. After everything else we'd been paying for, that honestly felt like a small win, and we'll take those anywhere we can. Sweden does not have a traditional property tax. Instead, you pay 0.75% of the tax value with a capped maximum amount. For example, in 2024, that is 830 euros per year. Once you've hit that cap, it never increases, even if your house is more expensive. That was a very positive surprise. The next one is a cost you can't escape when you're buying a house in Sweden. In Swedish, this is called lagfart. Basically the property transfer fee. You pay 1.5% of the purchase price, and it's basically the government's fee of putting the house in your name. It's not exciting, it's not optional, and it's definitely something you want to have in your budget from the start. We also want to mention this quickly because it really depends on your situation. We didn't do a separate inspection, but if you do, you need to pay for that yourself. And we don't have a mortgage, so we didn't have any mortgage related costs. But that can definitely change things a lot for other people. We imported our car shortly after arriving. We go into all the details in the previous episode, number 7. The total cost came to about 400 euros. Not the most expensive part of the move, but definitely the most stressful one for us. The admin costs don't feel dramatic, but they're unavoidable. Getting your person number is free, but getting your Swedish ID card costs 35 euros per person. Your bank account usually comes with a small monthly fee, but that depends on your bank. And if you need a passport renewal, that cost depends on your situation. For me, my Dutch passport was expiring pretty soon, so I had to renew it not long after we arrived. That meant a trip to the Dutch embassy. We turned it into a fun trip to Stockholm, but let's be honest, it's still a lot of travel just for a passport. It is cheaper if you do this back in the Netherlands. I had to pay about 175 euros for it. So here's a tip: if your passport expires soon, renew it before you move. We forwarded our mail from our old address to the new one for a couple months. We paid about 70 euros for this. Worth it just for peace of mind. One question we do get: is moving with a pet expensive? Short answer, no. We moved with our cat Pixel, and honestly, she was one of the least expensive parts of the move. Because we stayed in the EU, the only costs we had for her were a vet checkup and her vaccinations. The total cost for this was about 50 euros. That said, costs can go up quickly depending on the country you're moving to and from. So while Pixel did not break the budget, it is something you have to think about and budget for early on. Because pet rules are strict, and missing one document can delay your whole move. Always worth it though. Packing and moving supplies is where budgets quietly break. You need boxes, tape, bubble wrap, mattress covers, IKEA bags. We spent about 200 euros in total. This is also something you can make as expensive as you want. Second-hand marketplaces can save you a lot of money if you are willing to put in the effort. Time isn't something you can put an actual price tag to, but it's very real. Taking days off work, using vacation days to move, being so exhausted you can barely function. We even got sick from how tired we were. And that definitely has a cost, even if it doesn't show up on your bank account. Another cost we kind of underestimated was replacing furniture. Some things just weren't worth moving. Some things didn't survive the move. And some things were very old, like from our student days, and had already lived a full life. Not bringing a lot of stuff also saved us a lot of trips back and forth. And we went from a small apartment to a bigger house without bringing a lot of furniture. So yes, those first months definitely came with some extra spending. And couches get expensive fast. How much this costs really depends on you, your taste, your budget, and how much you decide to bring. But it's one of those costs that people almost always underestimate when moving house. Some things you only need because you're in between. You might need a temporary SIM card, temporary insurance, a storage overlap, or overlapping rent. We did overlap 1 month because it just made things a little easier. Again, very situation dependent. Then there are emotional comfort costs. We didn't really track these, but they're real. Ordering food because you're exhausted, buying duplicates of something, small things to make your house feel like a home, buying snacks in your new country just because you have never seen them before, and bringing treats from home because you're scared you're never going to be able to get them again and you want them one last time. So what did this all cost? The approximate total in euros is D.I.Y moving and storage 2,800 euros, fuel 900, hotels 600, tolls and bridges 300, packing supplies 200, mail forwarding 70, car import 370, ID cards for 2 people 70 euros, pet checkup and vaccinations for Pixel 50 euros. So a total of about 6,000 euros. And that is without the search for our house, buying new furniture, house purchase costs, and long-term subscriptions. Still, compared to the 10,000 euro quote we got from the moving company, we are very happy with the choice we made. Something we noticed is that people ask the same few questions once you tell them you moved abroad. Did prices actually match what we researched beforehand? Honestly, yes, pretty much. We didn't have any of those big financial shocks where you think, wait, what is that price? Which was a huge relief. A lot of people warned us that Sweden would be a lot more expensive than the Netherlands. But in our experience, it kind of balances out. Some things cost more, some things cost less, and at the end of the month, it feels similar. So no, it wasn't the scary price jump that people told us it would be. Another thing people wonder about is what costs come after you move. And this is where it really depends on your own situation. For us, most costs after the move were very house related. Renovations, paint, replacing our heating system, redoing the electricity in the entire house, setting up new trash collection, electricity and insurance contracts. And then there were things we hadn't thought about at all. Because we have our own well, we wanted some water filters and to do a yearly water quality check. We have a septic tank, so that needs to be emptied every year. And since we added a wood stove, our chimney needs to be scrubbed regularly, and firewood suddenly became a real reoccurring expense. None of these are shocking on its own, but together they're the kind of cost you only discover once you actually live there. And then there were small lifestyle shifts that we hadn't really budgeted for, like driving much longer distances just to do groceries. So even though fuel is cheaper here than in the Netherlands, we definitely overall spend more on it. Those costs didn't hit all at once, but they do keep coming in the first couple months. And then there's the big one. How long until things felt financially normal again? Not immediately. The first months are heavy. You need everything at once. Furniture, tools, supplies, random things you didn't know you needed until you really did. We went from a small apartment to a house without bringing a lot of furniture, so things kind of add up there. But eventually, after about 6 months, it settled. Your expenses become predictable again. You stop buying 10 things a week, and it finally starts to feel like normal life, just in a new country. If you're planning to move abroad and this video helped you, make sure to like and subscribe. Ask us any questions in the comments, we read everything. We also have a Patreon, so if you want more updates and behind the scenes content, go check it out, it's linked in the description. Next time, in episode 9, we're talking about actually settling in. Finding your favorite places, stores, routines, and slowly turning your new country into home. See you on Wednesday.